This is a CBS News special report. Good day. The Republican-led House has just taken the biggest step yet toward repealing and replacing Obamacare. Seconds ago, the House voted to approve the American Health Care Act, the Republican replacement for Obamacare. Supporters needed 216 votes. They have 217. They just squeaked that through and gave President Trump his first legislative victory and set the stage for scrapping President Obama's signature legislative achievement. The bill now goes to the Republican-led Senate, where there will be considerable rewriting of the bill and then an effort to reconcile the two versions. So this is one step forward, but it's a very big one. Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes is at the Capitol. Nancy?
Scott, this is legislation that was all but left for dead about a month and a half ago when Republicans couldn't come up with the votes. But a couple of weeks ago, a moderate member, some conservative members got together, tried to figure out a compromise that would bring members of the Conservative Freedom Caucus on board, and they managed to do that. You might be able to hear in the background some chanting, na 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 na, hey hey, goodbye. That's Democrats chanting on the House floor because they believe that House Republicans will come to rue the day that they cast this vote, rolling back major pieces of Obamacare, replacing others, and Democrats argue undoing some key protections that exist in Obamacare. Republicans argue they're giving Americans more choices, that their proposals will bring down premiums for a lot of Americans, and they argue that Obamacare was crumbling under its own weight anyway, with more insurers just this week saying, Scott, that they were going to be pulling out of key states. Republicans are not being modest in their victory. They already have cases of beer standing by here at the Capitol, Scott, to celebrate. Then they're going to be boarding buses and heading to the White House, where the president is waiting to celebrate with them in the Rose Garden. A very unusual move, given the fact that, as you point out, this is only the first step in this bill's legislative journey. It now goes to the Senate, where it will almost certainly undergo major changes. Then it has to come back here to the House, and there are many steps along that journey where it could get derailed.
Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill for us. Thank you, Nancy. Now, those vote totals you were seeing on the screen just a moment ago were from a separate matter that the House was voting on today. The House Republicans have 217 yay votes for the replacement for Obamacare, which is one more than they need. Now, let's go to our chief Washington correspondent and the anchor of Face the Nation, John Dickerson. John, even some Republicans in the Senate oppose this bill. What are the challenges ahead?
Well, this is a big victory for the president right now. I remember when it was pulled, the bill was pulled more than a month ago. The president said he was going to move on to tax reform. Now that it's out of here, the big challenge is, first of all, the House has voted, House Republicans have voted without a score from the Congressional Budget Office. So that opens them to the charge that they may be rushing things. In the Senate, that's just what some of those Republicans are worried about, that there is no notion of how much this will cost and who will get hurt. So they think that basically this bill undoes too many of the protections of the Affordable Care Act, and that the arrangements that are made, because there is no cost accounting of them, and the arrangements that are made to mitigate those portions that have been taken away from the Affordable Care Act, that those won't do enough. So in the Senate, there is going to be a lot of pushback against this, and then anything in the Senate that they might pass, of course, the House, conservative House members may not like that at all either. So the big question now is what happens in the Senate, and then can they all agree on something in the end?
It was the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office last month that really scared a lot of Republicans away from the previous bill, saying that about 26 million Americans would lose their health insurance if that bill passed. Why did the Republicans in the House move ahead today without a report from the Congressional Budget Office?
Well, because the report puts a number on the pain. And once you get the momentum, you want to get something passed. And also they argue that the Congressional Budget Office, or at least the White House argues, the Congressional Budget Office can't really account for a bill like this. Now, this is the kind of gamesmanship that goes on in these pieces of legislation to get them through. But that CBO number was very instrumental in hurting the chances for this bill the first time around. It quantifies and makes very easily understandable one of the big downsides in the bill. So to avoid that, what they're trying to do from the House and what we'll see in this ceremony going over to the White House is create a sense of momentum to put pressure on the Senate and say to them, this thing that Republicans have promised since 2010 during the Obama administration that they would deliver to voters, don't you senators stand in the way of delivering to Americans what we have promised them for so long we would do.
So the House has just passed its latest version of the Obamacare replacement bill. Not a single Democrat voted for the bill, just as no Republicans voted for Obamacare 7 years ago. There'll be more about this on your local news on this CBS station, as always on our streaming news service, CBSN, and of course right here tonight on the CBS Evening News. We will also have the story of a woman fast enough to catch any horse in the Kentucky Derby with her camera. There will also be a White House ceremony celebrating this initial win for what many Democrats are now calling Trump Care. We will have that for you shortly, and until then, I am Scott Pelley in CBS News in New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to CBSNews.com.